Hello, hello, and welcome again on another edition of our Argos so-called online TV. So today, or actually on the 20th of May, we are celebrating the International Bee Day. And bees are very, very important for the environment and also for us humans. So let's welcome Manica, who will take us through the day today. Hello,
Hello,
Manica.
hello, hello. Good afternoon from Ljubljana.
Hello.
Hello. So,
So,
yes, it's true.
let's take, you will show us today what?
Actually, today we are going to walk a little bit around Ljubljana city center and talk a little bit about urban beekeeping and most of all, of course, as you already told us, about the World Bee Day. That's an important event, not just for us, for the environment, but yes, let's say that it's especially important for us Slovenians. And for those that will stay with me till the end of the tour, they'll know why, because I'll explain that at the end. Yeah. So
Okay, great.
I suggest,
Okay, take us away.
okay, I suggest we
Let's
start.
start.
Yeah.
Like
Okay, so just bear with me for a second because I need to turn around the camera and you'll see where exactly I'm located. So as I said, we're in Ljubljana city center. Because I had such a lush greenery in my background before, you maybe thought that I'm somewhere on the outskirts of the city. You knew that I'm going to be in Ljubljana, but not exactly where. But as you see now, on our camera, we are actually in the city center, and this in front of us, it's a square of the Republic. So we can also say that we are actually in a political center of our country, of Slovenia, and that's also because of this beautiful building on the northern part of the square. That's Slovenian parliament building. Actually, the newest addition to the square are these flags that you see, national flags, and you probably already guessed it. These are the national flags of members of European Union. This is because in a couple of weeks, Slovenia is going to take over the presidency of European Union. And that's not even the first time. Actually, we already had this honor a couple of years ago, or exactly in the year 2008. Talking about very important political events, I might also mention that this year Slovenia is also celebrating a very nice round big anniversary, 200 years since Ljubljana was the center of European politics. Actually, in 1821, from January till May, Ljubljana was hosting the big Congress of the Holy Alliance. That was the Congress that actually had to redefine political power in Europe after Napoleon's defeat. So, a little bit about the history, and now something about this interesting building in front of us. This is Maxi Market. It used to be one of the biggest shopping centers in Ljubljana and Slovenia. Well, now, of course, it's not the biggest anymore, but it's still quite nice. A lot of people from Ljubljana like it, especially because of the good um, food area in the cellar. And in front of us, two tall buildings, as you see. On the left-hand side is Bank of Ljubljana. On the right-hand side, another office building. But we are not interested about these two. Actually, our bee story, honeybee story, We'll start with the building that's hiding just behind this right one. Actually, we can already see it a little bit. It's this white building. It doesn't look very important, but in fact, that is the most important, the biggest, the largest cultural and congress center in Slovenia, called Cankarjev Dom in Slovenian, or Cankar Culture and Congress Center. And if you're wondering how this building is connected to bees, bee story, bee keeping, well, let me tell you that they are actually the pioneers of the urban beekeeping in Ljubljana in 21st century. But their honeybee story actually started much earlier. In fact, about 18 years ago, because in the year 2003, Slovenia beekeepers were hosting a very important beekeeping event, and that is Api Mondia. Api Mondia is the biggest beekeepers congress held every second year, every 2 years. And in the year 2003, there were more than 1,000 beekeepers from all around the world here in Ljubljana, actually in this cultural and congress center, Cankarjev Dom. So not just that they were um, hosting this important event. The thing is that one of the employees of Cankarjev Dom, Mr. Franz Petrovčič, while he was observing all these beekeepers, he was reminded of his childhood when he was on holidays at his uncle's house and observing him while he was beekeeping. So he, well, decided to start himself beekeeping as well. And since he was just a beginner, had to probably read a lot of different literature on beekeeping techniques, on the life of bees, biology, and so on. And while he was researching, I guess he also got some interesting information about beekeepers in the cities. And by cities, I don't just mean like small towns or small cities like Ljubljana, but also big metropolitan cities like, for example, London or Paris. And he actually found out that on a rooftop of Paris Opera House, they also kept some beehives. So he just got an idea that Cankarjev Dom, like Slovenian Culture and Congress Center, could also follow this lead. And he just went to the director of Cankarjev Dom with this proposal. Director actually said, yes, let's do it. So in 2011, Cankarjev Dom became, like you say, the pioneer of urban beekeeping in Ljubljana. So on a rooftop of this culture center, now we have already like 9 or maybe 10 beehives. They started small with just 3 or 4, and now they're already like 9 or 10. And well, if I'm here in front of the Cankarjev Dom, of course I have to mention this monument. It's a monument with the image of Ivan Cankar, Slovenian great writer that gave name of this to this cultural institution. But if we continue with our bee story, interesting thing is that when Cankarjev Dom with Mr. Franz Petrovčič started beekeeping on a rooftop of the cultural center, there was a lot of talk about that in the city, in Ljubljana. And some people were worried that the honey could be either um, black or poisonous because of pollution in the city? Well, first of all, let me tell you that Ljubljana, fortunately, it's not a very industrial city. And on top of that, it's actually a very green city. I already mentioned before. And another, let's say, proof of that is also the fact that in 2016, Ljubljana was nominated for the green capital of Europe. If we look at the area, the whole area of Ljubljana municipality, actually about 46% of the whole municipality area is covered by forest. And what I think it's maybe even more important is that in the urban center, like here, as we can see among these tall buildings, among the concrete, among the um, banks and offices, we can also see a lot of trees. Actually, altogether, there are almost um, more than 300,000 trees, and I could say that we are still counting. Why? Well, after Tsankarev Dome had this project with beekeeping, slowly other people started to um, just get inspired. There are more and more beekeepers also in Ljubljana, also in urban areas. Actually, by now we already have about 3% of all beekeepers of Slovenia living in the capital city. And that's not a small number. I have to tell you that maybe, well, you already know Ljubljana, it's not a big city. It only has about 280,000 citizens. Slovenia has only about 2 million people, but among those 2 million, there are 11,000 beekeepers. So 3% of this 11,000 is not such a small number, and we can even claim that actually Slovenia, if you look at the number of beekeepers per capita, it's definitely among the top of the world, um, about how many beekeepers there are per person per capita in Slovenia. So yes, and because Ljubljana is also this green capital of Europe, the government of the city, Ljubljana, had an idea to actually support beekeepers. And in year 2015, they started with a project called Bee Path. And till now, this project became, we can say, a big network or even a movement of several partners. Among them, of course, also Tsankarev Dome, our cultural and Congress Center. We're just here on the, let's say, at the back of the building, so you can see that actually kind of big building. It just looks small from the west, from the east, and yes, other members as well are all connected to support and develop beekeeping in Ljubljana. But for beekeepers, I would say the most important organization in Slovenia is definitely the Association of Beekeepers Societies of Slovenia. It's an association with very long history, very long tradition, and it's very well organized. May I say they they publish literature, they help educate new beekeepers. They also have a special um, services, consultants for beekeepers that need help with, for example, treating diseases of the bees or development of techniques, and also producing several kinds of bee products and so on. Actually, another interesting project is also helping schools all over Slovenia to educate young people. They publish all sorts of literature that is free of charge, and teachers can use, even if they're not beekeepers, they have plenty of information, so they can spread it around and help young generations to just learn about bees and beekeeping, traditional beekeeping culture in Slovenia. And all that is very important because, as we said in the beginning, bees are important not just for our own health and food, but for environment in general. So keeping bees alive helps as well, preserving environment and being in general very aware of environmental problems. And as you see, we are now on the other part of the cultural center near to the western gate, and we're here because of this interesting structure in the middle of the small square. It's going to be on this place only till tomorrow because, as you can see, it's on a wheels, and this is, let's say, the last or one of the recent projects of Association of Beekeeper Societies of Slovenia. And this project has the purpose to spread information even further, not just around Slovenia, but maybe later they'll even go around the world, or at least around Europe. So the purpose of this thing is to inform and to give certain experiences to people. Like, for example, here we have a couple of questions. Well, they're in Slovenia, so let me translate. The first statement is
Manica,
actually.
there
Mhm.
is a question. So, are the beekeepers mainly individuals?
Yes, actually, beekeepers are mainly individuals, but um, they there are more than, I think there are around 200 societies of beekeepers around Slovenia, and then they also, of course, are connected through this association. They're mainly small beekeepers. By that I mean beekeepers that have a few beehives mainly for themselves or for a hobby, but there are a couple of beekeepers that also do that as a trade, as a business. There are not so many. Actually, majority of beekeepers in Slovenia are individuals who do that because they love bees. And um, well, here there are some things about, or some questions. Let me show you this one. For example, um, uh, bees are very important, not just because they give us honey. That's a secondary thing. Actually, the most important thing, their most important service is pollinate uh, flowers. And that's why we can eat some fruits and vegetables. For example, tomatoes are pollinated by um, um, also by subspecies of bees. And here you have flowers. Does pollinate one bee um, when she or he um, goes on one circle around the beehive. So what do you think? Is it 250, 300, or 150? Maybe you can think about it, and later I can give you the, the answer. Oh, this is also interesting here. You see, well, it's closed now, but maybe it's visible if I go a little further. This is possible, can open, you see, and then if you open this part, you will get a sort of honey bar. Honey bar. I bet you would like to come to a honey bar and taste all the different kinds of honey. You probably know that there is honey, for example, from different flowers, or just maybe a certain type of flower, or we also have forest honey. I, for example, really like chestnut honey, but it's more on the bitter side, so a lot of people don't like it so much. It's very, very healthy. So here we have some more information about, again, about the honey, how we um, know if, if the honey is from flowers, or um, from the trees, or actually from the forest, we can say. And then there is something about other bee products, because we mainly talk about honey, but it's also important. The bees also produce bee flower pollen, and then there is propolis, and then there is bee wax that used to be very important for making candles. It's also bee venom that can be used, for example, for cosmetics. And here's something about Kranjska čebela, our uh, indigenous bee species that is called so Carniola bee, and it's very popular. Actually, it's the second most um, common bee around the world, right after the Italian bee, because of certain characteristics of our Carniolan bee. It's very non-aggressive. It also collects a lot of honey, so a lot of beekeepers around the world really like it. Okay, and inside of this um, pavilion that it's called Honey Story. So inside of Honey Story Pavilion, maybe go from this way so you can see better. See, you first have some beekeepers equipment. The first on the right hand side is probably the most common beehive that beekeepers use all around the world. It originated actually in the United States, but it's now very commonly used, especially for professional beekeepers. And then in the center and to the left, you'll see two types of beehives that are sorry, that now it's better. These two beehives are usually traditionally used in Slovenia. So it could be smaller or larger, for different amount of bees, but yeah, that's the difference is that for these beehives, you can um, reach the bees from behind, from the back, and this beehive opens from the top, from the top. So actually, well, let me try and go inside. Maybe I can show you better. Okay, yes. So here is this structure of, we call it LR beehive. So this is this one, and you would take off the lid. On the other hand, this here is just the image of how bees would make their beehive inside a hollow tree trunk. That's how they make their well, not nest, but yeah, well, their beehive in the nature. But For the beekeeper, of course, it's more practical if bees and bee colonies are in such, let's say, wooden boxes. Um, it's
Manica, you
much
have another
easier.
question. Does
Welcome.
Slovenia, you have another question.
Yes, yes,
Does
yes.
Slovenia export honey?
Well, actually, this is a very good question. Huh, maybe yes, some small amounts, but the truth is that Slovenia is actually not self-sufficient, even though Slovenia has a lot of beekeepers. As I said, first of all, they're more or less making or producing honey for themselves or for just some friends and the extended family. And while talking about honey, let me show you. This is equipment that is used for extracting honey from the beehive. It's working on, let's say, um, it rotates. So while it rotates, the honey just flows out of this um, em- well, beehives. But yes, unfortunately, environment, I guess, in Slovenia does not allow Slovenian bees to collect enough honey for Slovenia. About 80% of Slovenian honey is consumed. Actually, um, about 80% of honey beekeepers sell directly. They don't even have to sell it to the big uh, markets or big companies. And yes, unfortunately, Slovenia it's not entirely self-sufficient. Well, there's another thing that I would like to explain before we end. If you remember at the beginning of our tour, I promised you I will tell you why World Bee Day is so important for us Slovenians. And as you see, and I will show you here in the middle, um, we have history, well, very brief history of Slovenian beekeeping. Actually, I have to say that Slovenian beekeeping has even um, longer history, but written history, let's say, starts with this gentleman here. This is Peter Pavel Glavar, and maybe you notice the year when he was born, 1721. So another nice anniversary that we're celebrating this year, 300 years since his birth. But let me say that the most important beekeeper that almost every Slovenian has heard about is Anton Janša. And you probably see the date here. He was born on May 20th, 1734. And if you think that this is an coincidence, you're wrong. Actually, now we're celebrating the World Bee Day on the day of his birth, and this is because Slovenian Association of Beekeepers Societies of Slovenia, um, actually their president, Mr. Noč, had an idea a couple of years ago. Actually, I think it's already almost 7 years ago. He had an idea to propose to Organization of United Nations that his birthday would become a World Bee Day, International Bee Day. And Slovenian government actually supported this idea. So in 2017, this really happened. So the next year, from 2018, we actually do celebrate the international, or let's say World Bee Day on this date. And let me just say, well, I'll go closer in a minute, but let me just say a sentence on or two more about Anton Janša. Well, why is he so important for beekeepers, not just in Slovenia, but all over the world? The thing is that he became the first teacher, or even say the first professor of beekeeping in a school that Austro-Hungarian monarch Maria Theresa established in Vienna. So we could even say that he is the first modern teacher or first modern professor of beekeeping in the world. And he left us two very important books on beekeeping. Actually, he was very observant, and even though he was not a biologist or a trained scientist, he found out certain things about lives of bees, and also that mm, um, explained in his books. So yes, just one more thing. Okay, now the last thing, of course, is this important sign that it's like an emblem or a sign for the World Bee Day, May 20th, with the slogan, "Let's preserve bees." Okay, now let's just show you also one more time the entrance to the Ljubljana, well, actually Slovenia's cultural center. And now back to me. And Nina, are there any more
Hello.
questions?
No,
Yeah.
just thank yous and hugs and what a cozy
Okay.
honey shack. And Jane Rice says, "Wow, it's amazing to note that Slovenia has kept the practice and legacy of beekeepers
Yeah.
since the 18th century."
Actually,
Um,
maybe even longer. This is just written history, but we have to say that um, Slavic people in general, and I guess especially Slovenians, because we're really connected with our Carniolan bee. We brought this very, very developed practices of beekeeping when we came to this area. So yeah, maybe this
yeah,
tradition is even longer.
yeah.
Yeah,
We must not forget meat, one of the most important
of course.
drinks of our ancestors was also from
Yeah, yeah,
honey.
yeah,
I
yeah.
always don't
Ex-
think about alcohol, sorry.
exactly. You said it right. And actually, let me mention that this is just a small part of all these bee or honeybee stories that we can tell, not just
Mhm.
here in Ljubljana, but all over Slovenia. So everyone who is interested in Slovenia or honeys and beekeeping tradition, more than welcome to Slovenia and to see more honey stories around our country.
Exactly. Great invitation.
Yeah.
Exactly. So Jane also says, send me honey, okay?
Oh,
And
okay.
an excellent presentation. He's done with clarity and love, and the way you move
Mhm,
about in slow pace,
mhm.
allowing me to view the infos and attractions. So
Oh, okay.
nicely
Well,
done, Manica.
thank you. I hope I can take you around Ljubljana some other time again, and or even better, in person. We're all hoping for that.
Exactly. We are all hoping for the in person
Yes,
again.
yes.
Thank you, Manica. And
You're welcome.
yeah, you're busy as a
Okay.
bee.
Yeah,
Thank
that's how we are here in Slovenia. Very similar as our Carniolan
you.
beer.
Peace.
Okay,
Okay.
thank you.
Goodbye to you all. I hope you had a great
Bye
time with
bye.
Manica. And yeah. So Jane also
Okay.
says I will come to Slovenia. So maybe
Oh,
you don't have to send the honey. He will visit you.
I will definitely save some honey. Actually, my mom is also a beekeeper, and I will give her some of my mother's honey, and I will make sure she'll get it. Yeah.
Great. Okay. Okay. Bye to you all. Bye,
Bye
Manica.
bye.
Take care.
Bye bye. Thank
Bye
you.
bye.
Bye bye.